This is episode 128, where you'll be meeting Harjit Sohati Khan, whose beautiful business, Jeweled Buddha, was inspired by travels with her husband and an inability to fit back into corporate world when she returned. Now, that was because her heart and her desires had shifted entirely into her next chapter. Building a business and life that blends contribution, fulfillment, and financial reward? Welcome to Your Next Chapter, the show for women in their 40s and beyond who are on this adventure. I'm Angela Rasmus, and I'm delighted you're here. Well, hello there and welcome back to another episode of the Your Next Chapter podcast. This series, of course, is Under the Radar, where I'm having these fabulous conversations with women all over the world who have been doing very interesting things that you may not have heard about. Now, this is all a part of the launch of my new book, Your Next Chapter, Ditch Your Doubt, Own Your Worth, and Build the Business You Really Want. And it's interesting finding out where was the inspiration for so many of the different business ideas of the women that I've been fortunate enough to connect with and share with you. And Harjit has got the most interesting story to share with us today. It came with a tinge of adventure as she was traveling overseas with her husband, and it brought back a sense of desire for something new that she could step into. So I cannot wait to share this tale with you today. Harjit, thank you so much for spending your time here with us today.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
I'm excited to go through this as we were talking before I hit the good old record button. The next chapter, change cycle, it's like it was written for you. Everything that you've experienced has just, to me, been such a perfect example of someone who had that desire, had that discontent, then that desire, and then screwed up that courage and made the decision to actually start designing and delivering this whole new business, which is hugely exciting. So I would love you to take us backwards before we plunge forward and just give us some insight as to what was it that lit the fire and got you moving in this new direction, this next chapter.
Yeah, I think it was just that, I was in a job which I didn't particularly enjoy. Previous to that, I was in one of my most favourite jobs, which was a creative role in marketing, and I absolutely loved it because I used to work with photographers and we used to go away, and the people I worked with were just amazing. It was almost like a family, really. And then I stepped into a role which was more corporate, and in the end I did it for a few years and I just started sort of not liking it anymore. I felt that it didn't fit with me and I didn't fit there. But, at the end of the day, we've all got responsibilities. So, we have to sort of take care of that. And I just felt that the whole routine of just going to work, the commute, the to-do lists and, everything that comes with working in a corporate environment was just beginning to sort of make me unhappy, mentally unhappy. So I just, started questioning a lot of things, in my life. And around that time as well, my mum wasn't very well, and it really made me think about life and, whether I was anywhere close to making my dreams come true. And I was sort of 42 at the time. So, I'd always wanted to travel. That was, the one thing that I loved. And luckily my husband loved it as well. And we always used to go on really beautiful holidays and, travel far away. But it was just never enough. And I think while I'd be sitting at my desk in the office, I'd spend more of the time sort of just daydreaming about where I'd rather be and what I'd rather be doing. And I wanted something more purposeful, more fulfilling. So, a few things happened. And as I said, my mum wasn't very well. And after she'd got better, I thought to myself, I really have to make a change.
Yeah.
Because it had come to a point where I couldn't really sort of ignore how I was feeling. It had come to a point where I either do something about it or I just live to regret it. So, that's what I did. I basically just left my job.
I love it, the jump, and that whole feeling of I just had to do something, I just knew it, or I'd live to regret it. That sort of internal call that just kept tapping, wasn't going to let go of you, was it?
No, not at all. It was just, I think also when you get older as well, you start questioning of, maybe I should have done this a very long time ago, travelled in my 20s. But really, I was almost compelled. It was almost not against, it was almost something I couldn't help. That's how strongly I felt about it. And I think because I was in my 40s, I thought to myself, I have to make this change now. So, I literally handed in my resignation and left a month later. There was no sort of wanting to come back or, just taking a sabbatical for a year. I thought to myself, I'm going to go away and I'm going to, sort of have time to think, when you have the freedom to think, because I think when you live this life of, living in a city and you're working in a corporate environment, you've got all your other responsibilities like mortgages and, family responsibilities, you get sort of sucked into something and you can't freely think for yourself. So that's what I did, basically. I just left, and it was the best decision of my life.
That idea of needing the freedom, the space and the grace to be able to contemplate is incredibly important. I think we do get tied up in this treadmill, this cycle of doing and doing and doing, and we can hear that desire to look at something else, but to actually have the courage to give yourself that space is quite unusual. Quite unusual. As we were talking before, for every one of us who makes the change, there's 10 of us who want to make the change. So it's actually quite a courageous decision to go, you know what, I'm letting go of what I know to step into. I'm not sure yet, but I know I have to follow that call.
Yeah, and I think that word letting go is very important, actually, because that's something I learned not only before I left, but whilst I was traveling and also when I came back, because I think a lot of life is about letting go, whether that's letting go of people you might have lost or letting go of things that you own or jobs that you might have done or, titles and tags that you give yourself. A lot of life is about letting go. And I think it was I was really scared, to be honest, because I was, in a secure role. So that was really difficult to let go of, and also everything that comes with having a job. That was very difficult. And I was literally petrified, to be honest, but, with the support of my husband and my family, it was something that, I thought to myself, this is a good thing, and if you think about your life, you think about, I don't know, we all live till about 70, 80, hopefully longer, but it's just a very small period, isn't it? So you have to think of your life in, a broader sense as well and think, look, it's just a small period of time that you can really, and you don't get these opportunities very often. You have to make them happen yourself, but you don't get them very often, and you have to really grab those opportunities.
I completely agree. And it's funny, the timing, you said you were 42 when you decided to take the leap. That's the same age that I was when I decided I can't do what I was doing any longer. I had my own business at that stage. I had a marketing agency. But as you mentioned in the story that you share, which can be read on the website, is for people who like to read rather than listen. If you go to www.angelarasmus.com/stories, you'll find this story there as well. But at that age, I was in the corporate mindset in terms of the type of clients that I was taking care of, and I had the desire not to do that any longer. I was commuting to an office, I was handling a team of staff that I'd hired, and it just didn't align with my values any longer, the woman that I was becoming. And I had that same feeling. There was terror, like, how can I let go of what is working, inverted commas, so well, to just step into this feeling that there's something else that you'd rather be doing. And it's quite a scary shift to make. So hats off to both of us, huh?
Yes, definitely.
There's actually, in the book, I talk about a thing called the discontent continuum, which is the scale, if you can imagine, from when you first realize, here in Australia, we'd use the expression, not happy, Jan, which came off a television commercial a couple of years ago. But recognizing that discontent and then recognizing that it grows over time until you do hit that point. I talk about the move from irritable to comparative to yearning to feeling trapped to sometimes feeling resigned before you really feel a bit desperate and I've got to change this now. So what was waiting for you was this adventure travel. Tell us about what you discovered about yourself and about what possibilities were there when you were traveling.
Oh God, there was so many. I mean, we did a great plan of what we wanted to see. It was basically a bucket list of everything that we wanted to see, before the end. And it was just a wonderful adventure across South and Southeast Asia. So, some of the countries that really taught me a lesson were Nepal. So, one of the first places we went was there, and we did a trek in the Himalayas. It was just one of those things I always wanted to do. And that in itself was just like a lesson. It was like a life journey of, just taking it one step forward and never looking back and just always moving on and just seeing all these amazing people of different cultures and tribes and really just appreciating how beautiful the earth is that we live on. And, everywhere we went, the first 2 months were like sort of a bit nerve-wracking because we were still in that mindset of being at home. But as, the weeks and the months went by, we really sort of just really settled into this feeling of freedom and making decisions for ourselves that weren't influenced by anybody else. They weren't influenced by your upbringing. They weren't influenced by what people might think about you. They were just coming from your own soul, It was very much like, this is, I'm learning about who I am, what I can cope with. And obviously when you're traveling, and we actually went backpacking, so we weren't always, these people that loved 5-star hotels and everything. We've experienced quite a lot of things, so we're quite easy that way. So backpacking was just a lesson in itself. And as the months went by, there was a lot of sort of artisans that I would stumble across, and that really sort of planted a bit of a seed, of, I love all this handmade stuff that's going on. But it was just a real transformation. It was really enlightening and really empowering to actually come back and think, wow, is that who I am? I'm really proud of who I am for doing this. And I'm also, amazed with what I can cope with, the jet lag, the long journeys, the insect bites, the food poisoning. Yeah. And it didn't, in the end, it didn't bother me. A lot of people, we met a lot of people that, went home or didn't like this, or, I couldn't do that. And, it's too hot. And, there's too many mosquitoes. But, it was all part of it. And I think it's sort of building resilience in your own character, which is so important.
Oh, the resilience part is something that stands you in incredibly good stead and going into being a business owner down the line, because not everything turns out the way that we anticipate or expect, and being able to bounce back up when things are not going according to plan is so important. So a great life lesson, as you were saying, on the trails, but that description also of that sense of freedom, that you really sound as though you began to tune inwards and trust your own instincts a lot more, because you weren't it wasn't attached to other people's opinions or expectations. You could become who you truly are.
That's right. And I think that's really important as well, especially when you get in your 40s as well. Sometimes you can get to a point where your confidence sort of starts to wane a bit. It's not like it used to be in your 20s, but actually, this type of age that we have is actually more profound, I think. You appreciate things more, and you think about things in a broader sense, in a wider sense, and you have a different type of confidence, which is actually a bit more stronger than you had in your 20s and stuff.
I think it's a beautiful time of life, to be honest. I remember my 40s fondly. They weren't that long ago. But I do see this as our next chapters are journeys into self-trust. That's a huge part as we begin to, the way you were describing the different type of confidence really resonates with me. It comes from a different place. And to me, that definition is that we are moving away from looking for self-esteem and seeking self-esteem, which is very externally driven, achievement driven, approval driven. And we're moving more into a place of self-worth, where we're recognizing the value of who we are and what we can contribute. And that comes from a very internal experienced place. So I think it's a marvelous time of life to be moving into and discover just what you are capable of, as you discovered on your travels, but now moving forward as establishing this new business, which you said the seed was planted when you were seeing the artisans and the beautiful work that they were doing. Tell us how that, when you came back to the real world and tried to sort of slot back into your old life, how that just wasn't going to work anymore and where it led to.
Yeah, it was, while we were traveling, we were seeing lots of people, just even on dirt roads, hand making yak wool shawls or making something on a sewing machine or, hand looming and weaving. And it was just a wonderful thing. So I think while I was traveling, it was just, I was getting all these lots of sort of ideas and creativity coming through. And I think towards the travel, I started thinking, all right, I'm going to be going back in a month or two. What will I do? Will I slot back into the corporate? So when I did come back, luckily while I'd been traveling, I'd been making contacts and everything. So I'd sort of, realized that by the time I was going to come back, I wasn't going to do that. So when I did return, there was a period of readjustment, really, because coming back after a year, you find that everything is actually still the same when you come back. But when you've changed so much, you think, oh my God, you're almost like sort of shouting to the world saying, I've changed, don't you understand, and you're all the same. And, I don't feel the same about being here. And it was I just almost didn't want to be here, to be honest. And those who travel always have this constant itch to leave, which sometimes can be quite painful. And I won't lie, it took me about a year to stop crying about the whole thing because it had affected me so much. The
contrast and the contrast between how things had been and how things are. That would have been, I can imagine. I've never traveled for that period of time, but if I take the magnification of the sorrow when I returned from a month's holiday overseas, I can imagine that would have been very hard.
Yeah, it was just totally crazy, So, I just didn't feel the same. So when I did come back, there was a period of sitting on the sofa for about 6 months and crying, and that would be it. And then after a while, it was like, right, I've got to sort my life out now. What do I want to do? And I thought to myself, I looked back. There was one day I was sitting there and I looked back and I thought, you know what, the universe has been showing me these signs. And even though I sort of, was absorbing it while I was going away, because I was having such a great time, I was trying to deny the existence of reality of coming back, but the universe was actually telling me, look, I'm showing you this is an interest of what you have, and this is what you should do. And I literally just thought, oh my God, I connected all the dots, every single experience I had. And I thought, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to start a business which is handmade. I'm going to bring all those beautiful thoughts of, wanderlust clothing and global textiles and age-old craft techniques. And I'm going to bring it over here. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to start my own business.
I hope you're enjoying this conversation and perhaps it's inspiring you to start your own next chapter. Don't forget to pop over to my website where you can order a copy of my book, Your Next Chapter, Ditch Your Doubt, Own Your Worth and Build the Business You Really Want. In it, I'll take you through the next chapter change cycle that will help you develop the clarity and confidence to move into this next stage of your business and life. Just go to angelarasmus.com/Your Next Chapter book. I love how you looked back and you connected all the dots. I could almost hear that, I could hear that elation, but I could hear all the bits falling into place. And there's a conversation I had on another one of the episodes where we talked about how life is lived forwards, but it's understood backwards. And when we
Yes.
look back, we can go, yes, and that connects with that and that and that. And this has got so much to do with the ripeness of us to create next chapters, because we can look back with what I call hindsight, which is compassionate reflection. And you bring all those pieces together and you go, aha, but you need to be open and curious to be able to see
Yes.
those dots. And you did. And then once you've seen them, you've got to actually be prepared to go, you know what? I'm screwing up my courage and I'm taking this step. So talk to us about how you made the leap from recognition to actually making the changes.
So it was just, I thought I'd start doing some research on, how to start a business. So, and I think that's what was the most challenging aspect of it, really. It was, at the start, you're understanding that actually this is what you want to do, but actually putting it into practice is where a lot of people falter.
Yeah.
So, it was very much a case of weeks and weeks of research, and then, thinking, oh my God, where do you start? Because that's the most hardest thing, I think. Where do you start? Because nobody knows, do they, how to run a business, and you can work for a business, but everything's done for you and you're just doing what you have to do, almost on like a robot mode, really, because everything, all the business aspects, the marketing, you name it, is all done for you. So you don't really have to try that hard. But actually to do it for yourself is, a very challenging thing.
So what do you think, looking back now, using that hindsight, what were you able to do in terms of when you looked for support or ideas, or actually, as you're saying, taking the idea and putting it into action? What were the most useful tools or experiences there for you?
Yeah, I came across a mentor, which was really good. I was looking, for people who started a business, what did they do? And I found a lot of people joined Facebook groups to start businesses. And also I got a coach. So I could actually literally meet someone and say, look, I've got this idea and how do I, put it into action? So she was really great. She was the one that's going, yeah, that could really work, and this is where you need to start. So once you've got someone that you can talk to, it's so important in business, because otherwise, where do you start? You don't have all these skills of marketing and everything. And, you think, gosh, I don't even know where to begin. So having a mentor and being in a community such as business Facebook groups, where there's a lot of supportive women who are in the same position as you, and some that are ahead of the journey, and that it's so important to have that support.
You took the words right out of my mouth, that idea of a support community. And I do talk about that at length in the book, because it's certainly what has helped me when I started off all those years ago now. And that recognition that you had, I call it the continuum. I don't see the world as a hierarchy. I see it as a continuum. So there's not people above us or below us. It's just that they started earlier, so they're a little further along. And they turn around and help us, and then we turn around and we pass that on as well. And sometimes that's done informally in community Facebook groups, etc. But there's also much value in investing in mentoring and coaching, especially I think in those early days, or when you are at those, you get this sort of plateau and then it's time to move up to the next level or to expand in a certain way. And having someone that has treaded the boards before you is really, really helpful for sure.
That's right. Yeah, because they can, sort of stop you from going down the pitfalls a lot of businesses go into, whether they're not good with money or finances, they don't know what to do with it or how to spend it properly or efficiently, just lots of pitfalls that you can go down to, and having that person to sound off on and someone to give you good sound advice, is really important, to get on a journey that's a lot more smoothly than if you just did it by yourself, not knowing what to do.
Yeah, they can see the potholes and they can sort of navigate you around them rather than lift you up out of them.
That's right, yeah.
So tell me, how the feeling of self-doubt is something that comes up for a lot of people, whether it stops them from starting or it detours them whilst they're on the journey. What's your experience been with that, my darling?
Oh gosh, it's almost an ongoing thing, really. I mean, they call it
Yep.
so many names, don't they? You know, confidence wobbles, imposter syndrome. You know, I used to read about imposter syndrome. What is that? You know, everyone keeps going on about it, but it's something that can happen. In my experience, talking to other business women, it can happen almost like on every decision that you make, or just it can happen if you're posting something about yourself and you're not used to doing that. It's almost like, no, I can't say that about myself. Am I that person now? You know, so self-doubt is something that will always creep in. And I think it's, you know, the way your brain works to keep you safe, you know, so that, you know, you don't step out of your comfort zone too much. But I think if you stay in that, you don't really progress, you don't move forward. You know, you're always like sort of, and it can be crippling as well, basically. It can stop you moving forward. It can stop you telling the world, you know, how great your business is. And that's what you have to do. I mean, I'm quite sort of shy in that way. I've always, ever since I was a young girl, I was always quite shy. And I'm not used to like sort of, you know, shouting about myself too much. But you can do it in a way where it feels nice, you know, it feels natural. So, you know, I think self-doubt is just something that will always be with you. You just have to learn how to control it and keep it in check and not let it stop you moving forward.
It's such a realistic appraisal of it, because that's the way that I certainly experience it, and I know so many of the women that I support feel it as well. It's one of my expressions: I borrow my belief in you until you have it for yourself, because we need to build up those belief muscles. And you're right; it definitely doesn't go away. It just we learn to work with it. What have you found has been one of the more successful strategies that you've employed to help you when that inner critic, as I would say, is the personification of the amygdala, the really old part of your brain that wants to keep you safe, and you're about to post and up she runs and starts telling you all the reasons why you shouldn't. What sort of strategies or tactics or approaches have you found most helpful?
Apart from trying to talk myself out of it for a very long time, or ask my husband and go, well, what's great about me? Or, you know, do you think I'll be great at this? I think really what I do a lot is I look back at how I've grown. And I think just looking back at how I felt when I was traveling and when I came back, because it was such a difference to who I was before I left to who I am now. It's almost like, you know, me saying to myself, look what you've done, you know. So I always pat myself on the back, basically, these days. I never used to, but I celebrate the small wins that I have. And, you know, they're small for me, but they might be big for someone else. And there's always someone out there who does think you're an inspiration, which I still can't get my head around sometimes, but people tell me that. And, you know, I sit there and I think, you know, this is what I've done. So I think it's so important to, you know, sort of say you've come such a long way, you know, and that's one way of saying to yourself, you know, that's where the self-doubt can just literally, you know, get on the bus and go away, basically.
Yeah, you can sit in the corner. I've got important stuff to do.
Yeah.
See, there's a natural tactic there of what I refer to that as reverse gapping yourself. So we can often look at how far we still have to go, and that can be quite like debilitating, like, oh my goodness, I've hardly scratched the surface, because I think we often have these expectations about what's possible, and it often takes longer than we anticipate. But if we look back, if we actually take the time to pause and look back at how far we've come, that's where you get your future fuel from. And you've certainly you've learned that and experienced that. And it's so good to hear that you can acknowledge your own growth and progress, because sometimes we can downplay it, like, oh no, it's not been much. But really, when you look at what you have developed, that can give you that sense of like, well, it's that understanding of the value of what you're contributing to the world, and it's that recognition of the amount of growth that you've experienced as a direct result. It's incredibly valuable when we can do that.
Thank you. Yes, I think it's a journey into, you know, growing as a human being, and, you know, growing as a person, and like sort of, you know, just really embracing everything that comes to you, you know.
It's definitely a journey, that is for sure. There's so many ways in which we grow and develop as we move through these next chapters and as we do the things that we didn't think we could do. But each day, there's just that little extra expansion. There's stuff that knocks us backwards as well. But I think our resilience grows as a result of that.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, I feel like I'm so much more confident than I used to be before. I was a bit of a people pleaser before, and now, I've realised that, you can interact with people in an equal way. So, in that way, I'm so much more confident in my capabilities now.
Yeah, you can hear it. You can hear the certainty that comes from being anchored in that recognition of your own growth. It's a delight to hear it when I'm speaking with different people who have established their businesses. So talk to us about, as we come to an end of this conversation, just give us the heart, the soul of what Jeweled Buddha is all about. What lights you up about it?
Well, Jewel Buddha is basically, it's an ethical fashion business for style-conscious women. But what I love about it is that it's actually celebrating ethical fashion. So it's putting artisans at the heart of the business. And all their age-old crafts and techniques and heritage textiles that we have. It's celebrating, the beauty of that, but it's transforming it into really wearable wardrobe staples that are contemporary and modern. So it's just a really beautiful way of appreciating your clothes. I mean, back while I was traveling, we were talking about, the backpacking and everything. That really taught me a lesson on how to appreciate your clothes, and all my experiences of visiting different countries that were either in poverty or were experiencing social or gender inequality. It really made me, as I said before, connect the dots and think, this is not just a business where, I want to sell clothes. This is a business that has to be ethically made, it has to be sustainable, whereas now everyone's into fast fashion and, it's all about getting the cheapest clothes, wearing them, throwing them away, but this really, Jewel Buddha is very much about appreciating those who make your clothes and appreciating how they're made, in what way they're made, and making sure that they're sustainable. So, they're good for you. They empower you with style because they're modern and wearable and beautiful, but also that, they're good for the planet as well because they're organic. So, it's Jewel Buddha is something that I'm immensely proud of.
Yeah.
It's something I never thought I'd do. And as I said, looking back to working in an office before and having this, it's something that I still can't believe sometimes. I have to pinch myself, but it's such a really beautiful, creative process. And I'm so lucky because, it's a job where I can travel again. So, I pre-COVID, I was traveling to India. I mean, everything's pre-COVID now, isn't it? I was traveling to India to source beautiful textiles and spend time with artisans. And, it's very fulfilling. It's very purposeful for me.
I love the description there when you're talking about that you're more than a business that sells clothes. That the philosophy in here is the natural sustainability of the business. But what I'm hearing is that you're standing for something bigger than what it is that you sell. And that's the part where I think it really anchors you in. I believe that our next chapters, we need to have businesses that give us a sense of contribution. So we're making a difference, that give us a sense of fulfillment, so we feel really good about what it is that we're contributing. And then there is the financial reward piece as well for the good work that we do in the world. And those three, if they all intersect, right at the core of that is that clarity of this is the thing that I'm here for. And it sounds as though you're very deeply anchored in that sort of philosophy.
Yeah, it's good to have a purpose. There's no point spending your life in a job that you don't feel happy in. And for anyone who does make a change, it doesn't have to be about traveling or starting a business or whatever. It can be something that you want to change your life because you feel that there's a purpose and it makes you happy and it fulfills you from within. So I think it's very important to have that mindset.
I'm with you 100%, 100%. So as we're drawing this conversation to a close, let us know what is something that is on your horizon, because this change cycle, we talked about a major change in terms of from corporate to this new world for you, but there's always mini wee changes that are coming through, whether it be new lines that we're introducing, new markets we're moving into. What's something new that's coming for you, and where can we find you online to discover more?
Gosh, there's lots on the horizon. Next month is really great because I'm actually going to be in a department store with a great pop-up. So that's really exciting. But I've also launched a really beautiful range of hand-woven capes. And these are hand-woven by artisans in the Himalayas. And they're incorporating all sort of handloom weaving and all the age-old craft techniques. But these are amazing capes that you can wear in over 15 different ways. So you can wear them from, jackets to ponchos to wraps, you name it. And they're just a really great way of having one piece that goes with everything in your wardrobe. So they take you all the way from, sort of autumn, winter, all the way through to spring. So those you can find on jewelledbuddha.com. And your listeners can also follow me on Instagram as well. So I'm on there, Instagram and Facebook.
Perfect. Okay, well, I'll make sure those links are in the show notes as well so that people can come and discover you. But I've really appreciated you taking us through the journey. I'm waving my hands around here, which is hard to see on a podcast. But like the great full circle that you came in terms of you're back where you were, but wearing a completely different skin. You're a different person from that woman who decided enough is enough. I need to travel. This is calling me. I need to respond. I love that insight that you had, that life's too short basically to live with regret. And you knew that may happen if you didn't listen to that call that was inside. And that's really the message that I want our listeners to hear as well. So what sort of last words might you leave us with, last thoughts? Think of the woman who's listening now and she's got that little seed that's sitting inside of this desire to change. How can you empower her to step forward, Madana?
I would say really just take that time to listen to what you really want to do and then just go for it. If it's going to take time, I mean, we're living in, different times now with, COVID-19 and everything. So not everyone can suddenly dash off and go traveling or do whatever they want. But I would take the time to really listen to, what your heart is saying and make it happen, because unless you actually do something about it, unless you take action, it won't happen. And then that's where the regret happens. Sometimes in life, things happen later. I'm one of these people, a lot of things happened later for me. But I always had this hope that if it's not going to happen now, it will happen later. But you have to make it happen yourself. So, if you're thinking of making a change in your life, just do it. What's the worst that's going to happen?
Exactly. That are very, very wise words. Well, Harjit, thank you so much again for sharing your story. I've adored having the conversation with you, and I look forward to staying connected.
Thank you so much. It was wonderful to be here.
You're very welcome. And to you, my lovely listener, you know what I'm going to say. I'm going to say listen to that thing that is calling you inside. As Harjit has shared with us today, we don't want to go forward and look back with regret. We don't want to stay stuck where we are. I know that there is something else, whether it be a major change or just a small pivot, as that word of the day, a small pivot at the moment. Walk into it. Walk towards it. Give it a try. Don't expect that everything is going to fall into place at first. That is okay. We do this in baby steps, and then we find a little more clarity and a little more fulfillment and a little more of a sense of contribution as we move along. This is just one of the huge number of stories that we've shared on the podcast and in the stories section on the website. And every one of these, my wish for you is to take a little seed of inspiration so that you too can step into your next chapter. I can't wait to hear how that looks. And until the next episode, take very good care, and I'll be back speaking with you again very soon. Thanks so much for listening to the Your Next Chapter podcast. I really do appreciate your time. And if you'd like to connect with me, you can find me on Facebook or LinkedIn. And of course, my website, angelarasmus.com. If you enjoy the show, I'd love you to share it with another woman who's in the midst of business and life beyond 40. And if you love it, a review on iTunes or whatever app you listen in on would be fabulous. Reviews somehow impact that deeply mysterious algorithm and make it easier for the show to be found, which is always a good thing. So thanks again, and until next time, take care.